comic book fans out here, this is going to be an incredible, rare occurrence for everyone here and there. So without any further ado, we have another gentleman that's going to help us out with this panel. And his name is Brian Azzarello. We all know who Brian is. And of course, who you all are here to see, without any further ado, Megacon is proud to present this very, very rare occurrence of Mr. Frank Miller. You can sit there, right, perfect. Mr. Miller, it's indeed an honor to see you, sir.
Well, thank you very much.
You are looking good, by the way, and you sport your hats really well, so.
Look who's talking.
All I did was just pull up your images on IMDb, and I said, that's how I want to look, you know. The black one was yesterday, by the way. Thank you for being here. Like I said before, the way the panel is going to be held, we have, of course, questionings on either side of the room, but we're going to talk a little bit with Mr. Miller here, and Brian definitely is going to chime in. Because he's more of the aficionado in terms of Frank Miller and his life and so on than I am. So I'm really, really happy that he's up here, giving us that look, you know. Yeah, Mr. Miller, between, I'm not even going to, well, they're all comics, but Sin City, okay, for God's sakes, and then all of the Batman comics put together, your images that you have given us, and they are updated images, they are unconventional images that all of us are used to in terms of Batman. What gave you the idea to come up with something which looked to us sort of different than what we're used to?
Well, when it comes to Batman, mostly what I wanted to do was to just turn myself back into a little kid that liked Batman in the first place. So he had to be obviously big and scary, and had to scare the crap out of bad guys. Also, when I got my hands on Batman, I was 29 years old. I couldn't stand the fact that I was Batman's age. I had to do something drastic. So I made him ancient. I made him 55. and most of the rest of the story flowed from that. I simply placed him in a more modern world and played with the world that I saw around me and with the wonderful characters that DC had at their disposal. I couldn't wait to do the scene I was building up toward, which was to see Batman beat the living daylights out of Superman.
Awesome. Brian, anything you want to add to that before I move on?
Said what he meant.
Of course, absolutely. Well, it's nice how the current movie images, the images of Batman in motion picture is pretty much reminiscent on what you have created. And being Batman at 55, of course, you come up with some attitude issues and more gruffness and whatever. And then
his arthritis.
He has arthritis, yeah, so he would be angry in the first place, right? But the Christian Bale images of Batman as it was re-imaged seem to take a little bit away from what you have created. Did you see any of that or agree?
Oh, sure, I've seen pretty much all of it. But you can't work on a character like Batman and feel territorial. The character was created well before before I was ever thought of. And he's been interpreted a million different ways, and most of them work. That corny old TV show worked. It was funny. The Bruce Timm animated TV show is beautiful and wonderful. And there have been a bunch of different interpretations of Batman over the years that have been very good. Mine was my particular take. I decided to make him a bit rough around the edges.
And we appreciate that. We're going to go ahead and open up the floor to these guys. Hi, you got a question?
Hi, yes. Mr. Miller, you've had an amazing body of work, and obviously a significant portion of that has been translated to film. My question is this, as it goes through that process to film, is there any particular work that disappointed you?
Let's talk about the bad stuff. Adaptations of my work to film?
Yes.
Well, I've done them. So I don't really feel like bad-mouthing my other work either which way. Thanks.
Well, that just showed he was in total control, obviously, especially artistically, of his work, so.
What didn't you like?
I love it all. I'm just asking. Not trying to poke the bear.
Thank you, Brian. Your clarity of mind is much appreciated.
No, he's scared. That's just.
So answer the damn question.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, man. Appreciate it. Let's go to this side of the room. How you doing?
Hey, I had kind of a similar question, specifically about the spirit, Mr. Miller. I've been really frustrated since it came out that people don't kind of realize what a genius piece of work it was. And do you think that was because of the kind of the inherent political message in it, or why do you think it didn't get the kind of reception that your stuff normally does?
Well, I'm not aware of any inherent political message in the spirit. I was just out to tell a good yarn and to pay some homage to my hero Will Eisner. As far as any bad reaction I get, that's the same reaction I have. I feel the same way I always do when people don't like something I do, is I feel kind of bad, but I don't really care.
Thank you.
Awesome. Hi, what's up?
Not much. Well, Mr. Miller, it's a real honor to be meeting such a big, influential person such as yourself. A lot of your work has inspired me to, improve, go learn more about comics, and because I want to be a comic artist when I grow up. And one thing I wanted to ask you, because you've made a lot of influential work in comics, and you've made a lot of amazing films. What made you really want to branch out? And also, since a lot of your work is based off comic books, films included, I wanted to know, when it comes to adapting stuff, because I know Hollywood, changes stuff up and, wants to, oh, it needs to be like this so we can get to this crowd, not the people who would want to see a Sin City movie. And, and as a person who's worked on that, how do you get to make it sure your vision, gets to go into the film you're working on?
When you work in a movie, you're working with several factors that are very different in comics. In comics, there generally is much more freedom, especially if you have a track record, because the stakes aren't that high. Comics don't cost that much to produce. And they don't have to sell all that well to make them profitable. It takes a tremendous number of people and a tremendous amount of money to make even a moderately budgeted movie. And then it has to make millions and millions of dollars, far beyond its expenses, to be considered a success. So it's a much tougher game. You've got a lot more bosses. You're simply playing a very different game. I would say that the freedom that's available in comics is bracing and wonderful. Working in movies, you've got the benefit of working in the most powerful medium in the world, but also you're in for one hell of a test of character.
All right, thank you, sir.
Interesting. Alrighty. How you doing?
Can you hear me?
Hi. Given your gritty realism and macabre imagery, I just kind of wanted to know, how did Big Guy and Rusty come about?
Maybe I'm not as grim as you think. I never think of my stuff as, one thing, what's with this gritty stuff? Does it hurt your teeth? I spend a lot of time when I'm doing my stories laughing. I think there's a lot of comedy in them. But with Big Guy and Rusty the Boy Robot, the goal was simple. I wanted to do a kids comic. And I felt the desire to do something that was aimed more for kids, and I felt that the comics business had become so focused on adolescents that we were losing potential future readers. The book morphed in Jeff Darrow's hands into something completely different, but I love that too. So like any book, especially one with that intensive collaboration, it was a journey.
Awesome. So there's a little bit of fluffiness inside of you too, not just, you know, the stern, rough, I'm going to create a Batman that's going to go out there and kick ass all the time. You have a nice level of humor inside of you that you instill in your books when you did Big Rusty.
I'm a real softie.
Yeah. Okay, where are we? You good now? Like that? Okay, thanks. Hi.
Hi, Mr. Miller. I just want to say that you did an awesome job at, making an impact on Batman, Daredevil, RoboCop, etc. So you did a great job. Question I have, and it's maybe a bit spoiler heavy, but it's for The Dark Knight Strikes Again. But my question is, why did you decide to make Dick Grayson the Joker? And what happened to where Batman basically fired him? It's basically my question. Does that make sense?
What happened to Batman what?
Yeah, he wanted to know. Repeat that last part you said?
Wait, what?
Repeat that last part you just said?
What led to Batman and Dick Grayson's falling out in your adaptation of Batman?
He wants to know why you treated Dick so poorly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Here was my logic at the time, was that Dick Grayson was being trained by Batman to become the next Batman. And when push came to shove, he wasn't good enough. And Batman fired him. And Dick Grayson went crazy. That was my logic then.
Yeah, it's a good take, though. You just can't be, buddy, pal all the time. You have to have some sort of friction between friends and family members.
I'm not saying I was right. I'm saying that was my logic.
So he took it into that direction, which is brilliant, because a lot of people always say, what if? And Frank carried that out. Well, here you go.
See, eventually he did meet the person who was good enough to follow in his footsteps, and it was Carrie Kelly.
Cool?
Cool.
Hey.
First of all, Mr. Miller, I'd like to say thank you for coming to Orlando, and thank you for everything that you've done. You've really been an inspiration to me as an aspiring writer, or a writer now. And as a writer, I just want to know, with the millions upon millions of writers out there right now, how would you say that you could separate yourself from the herd? Like, get your work more noticed?
If I can say something here, I'm going to let him answer, but just the fact that he is here in this room, on this stage, he's already separated from the herd.
No. He's asking how does he get separated from it?
Yeah. Himself?
Sorry. No, this is one of the how do I get better at writing questions, right?
Yeah, well, how do I get noticed like you have and get better at writing? Yeah.
Well, all I can do is before I pass this question over to Brian, all I can do is repeat the advice that Will Eisner gave me a long time ago, which is when he told me that he didn't think I was coming with good enough stories at the time because I hadn't lived enough. And he suggested that I go out, I travel as far and wide as I can, I get my heart broken as soon as possible. And I live through as much hardship as soon as possible, and then I'll have something to write about.
Thank you. Yeah. Brian, you have your own expert. You have anything to add to that?
Do you write every day? You should.
I do. I've written reviews. I've tried writing scripts, short stories. I try to go through different genres. I try my hardest, but
Yeah, well, you got to write every day. It's a muscle. You got to exercise it. You know, write about what you have for breakfast and make it interesting. I tell people that all the time, and it's hard. Unless you have really unique tastes.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. You're getting advice from the experts out here, dude.
I know.
Yeah, where else can you go?
I appreciate it. I try writing as much as I can, but I always want to write more. And as I said, you guys have been like a major inspiration for me to aspire to that as a career.
I mean, right now, with the internet and social media, there's so many ways for you to get your work out there. You know? Start a blog, just like maybe somebody will notice it. You know? Be provocative, somebody will notice it.
Alrighty. All right. You okay? Looking forward to reading your stuff down the road, man. All right.
Hey, my question is about Batman v Superman came out a little bit ago and it's being so heavily based on your first Batman book. What is your take, because of being so like publicly crucified by critics and everyone, what was your take on it? Like, did you enjoy the movie? Are you like proud of what Snyder did with it?
I knew somebody was going to ask her that.
Should I step away? You're not gonna lash out.
No, I was rooting for Batman.
You got your answer. You good with that, man? Root for Batman, absolutely. Hey, man, nice t-shirt.
Thank you. Hi, gentlemen. Mr. Miller, I was just wondering, have you watched any of Netflix's Daredevil? And if so, are you flattered by the inspiration they take from all your work with that book?
No.
It's really good. You should watch it. I think you would be really flattered.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It's so much reading in between the lines of this panel, man. I think he's right on the mark.
What? He's got no lines.
That's true. Yeah, of course, with Netflix and their Daredevil series and things of that nature, and of course, Batman versus Superman. It's kind of hard to make judgments on things you probably didn't contribute to, I guess, right?
No.
Actually, that's easy.
It's really easy to make judgments.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they have to be shared.
That's cool. Hey, over there.
Yes. I'm up here. Hi, Mr. Miller. I normally don't do speaking in front of crowds, so I'm really sorry. We're super excited that you're here and that we got to see you. I'm actually up here for my husband that didn't want to get up here.
Coward.
Wow. Yeah, where is he? Point him out.
Stand up and take him like a man.
Good job, dude. Good job.
Oh, and shout out to the other woman over there in the question line. Whoop, whoop. I think you're a chick, right? Okay. So the question now, I can't see that far. The question that he wanted to ask is, in a lot of your works, you have female characters that are strong and kick-ass. Is there a particular motivation or inspiration, either from a specific person in your past or whatever, like where you got that?
I've known the right kind of women.
Okay.
I've known a lot of women who are very worthy and very strong.
That's a true story. We're awesome.
Is that a strange thing to say?
No. No?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, but I guess if there was a mother figure, a sister figure, an aunt, a cousin that you saw as being...
Yeah, my mother, my sister. I had a pretty gal aunt. And a lot of the women I've known personally and professionally.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, dear. I wouldn't sit next to your husband anymore. Hi.
Hi, Frank. Thank you for coming. I'm Cassandra, and my question to you is, when you were younger, did you have any influence from horror movies when you were growing up that had any influence in your work? Or have you ever had a desire to do any type of horror graphic novel or anything like that?
I certainly watched my share of horror movies. Everything from, I'm a lot older than you, so everything from the old Vincent Price movies on.
Yes.
I've not had much of an interest in doing horror stories because I'm so focused on heroic stories. And when I get into any other kind of genre, it tends to be my greatest love for fiction, which is crime stories. But doing stories about supernatural, that just doesn't interest me.
But I like blood, so.
Well, I've never drawn.
So I appreciate when you put the blood in your work.
I've never put any blood in any of my work under any circumstances.
It's all ink.
It's all ink.
Robert Crumb said it best. It's only lines on paper, folks.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
But you are a fan of Sin City, obviously, if you needed your share of blood, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, there you go. That was great. Right. That technique of filming, the film noir technique that we saw in Sin City, was that the intention when you wanted the writers or the directors or the filmmakers to carry out the film version of Sin City?
In Sin City, I was the writer, and there was one
I
or two
understood
directors.
that, yeah. But in terms of the look, the cinematographer.
And when Robert Rodriguez approached me about Sin City and wanted me to go directly with him, he had worked out a way to achieve on film using computer technology what I was doing with my brush, and so he was able to do a movie that wasn't like most black and white movies, gray and white. It was or black and gray. It was black and white, and the result was pretty shocking. Then when we added the element of color as an abstraction, it became all the more fun.
Much like 300 as well, when you had that filming technique in 300.
Yeah. They were both pretty high-tech movies.
And beautiful, visually beautiful.
What was it like when Robert first showed you that he could do it?
The tests he did?
Yeah. Were you blown away?
I did not wet my pants. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, the entire experience with Robert was one of the most remarkable experiences of my life. He showed me things that were a lifetime's worth of education. And I couldn't believe what he could do. And every day on the set, he would show me one more thing that he could pull off. Or I would storyboard something. I'd come in and say, because I'd work all night storyboarding. I'd come in at breakfast, we'd be sitting there, and I'd say, look, I came up with this. I know I can draw it. I know it would look good, but I think it would have to be animated. And he'd know immediately how to do it. And mostly he would just teach me the same lesson. You want to do something impossible, just find a way to do it backwards, and it works. Strange as it sounds, it's true. And he just showed me again and again that he was able. The guy was able to do magic. He did daily.
Well, like I said before, it was visually stunning. It was new to us because we hadn't seen those
New to me.
processes. Yeah.
Well,
and it worked.
It looked like the book.
Yeah.
Which, no comic movies really look like the book.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Where are we? On this side, I think, right?
Hello? Hey there. So, this afternoon, a lot of questions I've noticed have been about Frank Miller the writer, or Frank Miller the film director. I wanted to ask about you as an artist. Looking through a lot of the stuff that you inked yourself, stuff like Ronin or Sin City, you notice a style that was very different from the sort of clean inking that you see in contemporary comics. How did you derive this very particular drawing style that you have, and what was your inspiration for breaking away from the mold like that?
Well, usually and always it's people who've come before. When I was doing Ronin, I was studying a lot of Japanese artwork, particularly the work of an artist named Gosuke Kojima, who did a samurai series that was translated as Lone Wolf and Cub. But with Sin City, I really was able to find my own way of drawing comics by studying everybody from Will Eisner to Noel Sickles to Milton Caniff. And along the way, I learned that some of these older guys had actually started their pages inking by, the pencil drawing was already done, of course, but they start by inking by laying in all the black areas first, saving all the line work for later, so as to keep the line work as clean and spare as possible. And the whole look of Sin City emerged until finally, by the end of it, I was barely using line at all.
Incredible.
I know, right? Thank you.
All right, good. Hi guys, how you doing, sir?
Good. You've mentioned Will Eisner a couple of times, and I grew up reading the reprints and just think he was an amazing genius. And I'm kind of curious, since you had a relationship with him, any personal anecdotes or ways that he inspired you in terms of your relationship with him as an artist?
You got an hour?
Sure. I'll stay that long.
Well, the thing that leads to mind was he did teach me more than anything that if anybody shows you work, if a novice wants to show you work and wants your opinion, to give them your honest opinion and to not be gentle about it, because he was never gentle with me. And like Neil Adams did with me as well, he never spared me anything because he thought that it was actual cruelty to give somebody false assurance or to make them think it would be easier than it would be to work. Will was an extremely harsh critic. Beyond that, when he would offer advice, which he did more and more the more he thought that I was worth it, it almost always had to do with Will in terms of drama and clarity. He himself didn't believe, as I did, that the closest relative to comics is film. He believed that its closest relative was stage. And he treated the page itself like a proscenium arch, in which where the actors walked across it. So his camera angles, especially his later work, became more and more static. There was less camera movement. And more he focused on the intimate details of what the characters did. My approach is always much more action-oriented and much more based on cinema. But that's why you have mentors and teachers, is that so you can move in your own direction after you've learned what you can from them.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Hey, how you doing?
Hello. How's it going? All right, I have two quick questions. The first one is dealing with year one, and then after that, in terms of the Dark Knight trilogy right now that you're working on for the third one. For year one, what made you come up with the concept in terms of creating Batman's origin per se, in terms of just revising it in the wake of Crisis? And then for, after that, for the Dark Knight trilogy, like what made you come up in terms of the concepts, kind of like upping the ante, like you did from Dark Knight, then for Dark Knight 2, and then, like I said, now for Dark Knight 3 with the Kryptonians being the main villains?
Okay, the first question was about year one.
Yes, that's correct.
What got me started on that?
Yes, what gave you the idea for that one?
In order to, whenever you put together a story, you put together what's called a backstory, which is what happened before. obviously you'd think that with Dark Knight there wasn't any need for that because there's 50 years of comics. But I didn't feel anybody had ever fleshed out what happened, how Batman became Batman. All we ever knew was his parents were murdered and he went to school a lot, and became good at everything, and then fought crime. Oh, and a bat flew out of the fireplace. And yeah, very important point. And
lucky it wasn't a butterfly.
Butterfly man.
So before I did Dark Knight, I jotted down a bunch of notes for my backstory for Dark Knight, figuring out how he became Batman, and I just set them aside and just kept that in mind as I wrote through Dark Knight. When I finished Dark Knight, I got the itch to do more Batman, and none of his notes were sitting there, and I thought, oh, and this guy named David Mazzucchelli wanted to work with me on something, and it all fell together very naturally.
Was there another part?
And then the second question was dealing with Dark Knight in terms of the villains. Like, how was it that you came up with the idea to kind of up the ante, like from 2 to 3? Since currently right now the Kryptonians that were released from the Bottle City, sorry on the spoilers guys if you haven't read it already. Pardon me on that. How did you come up with the idea to up the ante in terms of the villains?
Brian?
God, how did, we talked about that in relationship to Superman being the last son of Krypton, which was just, it's not true because of all these Kandorians. And we also talked about rehabilitating, like Superman's kind of, in the Dark Knight universe, he's kind of, you know, he's got the bum rush a few times. So we're like,
oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, how do we rehabilitate him? We've got to give him a foe that he can fight against and be, you know, something even. And we just decided to break open Kandor. And plus, you know, listen, he said that the main villain has a point. It's like he's kept us prisoner in this bottled city for how long?
Yeah, what I
exactly.
What kind of guy would do that? Oh, I could be the only one who could fly. The rest of them get to be in a jar.
I'm the last son of Krypton. Well, what about us?
It makes sense to bring that into realization as long as we've known Superman, as long as we've known the Bottle City for that long in comics as far back as the 60s. It's like,
exactly.
I mean, I'm surprised the guy didn't shrink his daughter and put her in the damn bottle.
That's true.
Don't give away the ending.
Let's write that down. Did you get all that? But yeah, all those Kryptonians that we literally have on Earth, you would think with all their modern technologies, someone within that city would have come up with an anti-shrinking ray, right? At some point, and say, hey, I'm out of this bottle.
They came up with a formula, but they needed the atom who has the anti-shrinking ray.
The only one that can. Oh, wait a minute. No spoilers.
So Brian, if there's 10 million Kryptonians on Earth, what does that make us?
Ants.
Yeah.
Screwed. Yeah.
Pretty much.
Absolutely. You're right. Supergirl, the series, Supergirl basically focused on additional Kryptonians, which of course Phantom Zone related, you know, Kryptonians.
Yeah,
but
exactly. The TV series did that.
Yeah, no one came back to that realization, hey, there's a freaking bar sitting here on the counter. I mean, a jar sitting here on the counter, you know. And
yeah.
So, cool.
And I think we both agree that he's a more powerful character if it's just him. You know, being
Sole survivor of exploded planet Krypton. Yeah, he's Moses.
Yeah, it's a more, you know, it's a richer character that way. Instead of, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting the Krypton, right?
Yeah, more Weisinger's dead.
All right, you're good, man?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, brother. Thank you so much.
Hey there. I first want to say, Frank, you are an extraordinary writer as well as an extraordinary artist, and I'm really digging Fedora, by the way.
Thank you.
My first question is, would you be open to writing another Batman movie, or a Batman movie, I should say? And if so, what kind of story would you write?
I think I'd most be interested in working on a Batman movie if Bruce Timm would be interested in working with me. As far as what kind of story it would be, I don't know. That's the wonderful thing about the character. I'd have to sit down and come up with something. The character's got a zillion stories in it.
It seems like the current Ben Affleck version of Batman is leaning a little bit more towards visually, at some point, Frank's work. And I'm wondering if anyone has reached out to you. Oh, Brian, you got something. Someone has reached out to you and said, hey, how do we do this?
They got my phone number.
No, it's a damn shame that they haven't called yet. Seriously, man.
Brian, what's going through your mind, man?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Empty thought balloon.
Okay. Where are we on this side of the thing? Yeah, hi.
Yes, I would like to know, on the set of Sin City, like your relationship with Robert Rodriguez, and what came about that brought you to be the co-director of that movie, actually.
He invited me. We got talking, and we started casting, and then he just said, look, this doesn't make any sense. You know, why don't you just come on board and we'll do it together.
Thank you.
Which is great. It's a great homage to the guy that created, Sin City. Let's bring the writer on board and have him.
It also speaks of Robert Rodriguez as having one of the healthiest egos I've ever encountered, which is rare in Hollywood, and that to have put not only his resources at my disposal, but to take the enormous risk of testing somebody of bringing somebody on who was untested. It wasn't the studio's idea; it was Robert's.
Wow, that's great. Hey, man.
Hey, what's up?
Wrong shirt.
Huh?
Wrong shirt.
Hey, you got a problem with Superman?
Sorry. My first question is, Ben Affleck's version of Bruce Wayne, like you said, it was like somewhat inspired by Frank's, take on the character in Dark Knight. What is your opinion of his performance in that role?
Yeah. What's your opinion?
I liked it. He's a good actor.
So you did like his take on it?
He's a good actor, yeah, and he obviously is very, very close to all this material and plays with great affection.
I was just curious because there was a lot of internet speculation. He got crucified a lot for his performance. But it was based on your thing, so.
Well, the wonderful thing about the internet is that delete button.
Yeah. My other question has to do with Dark Knight 3: The Master Race. My understanding is your involvement in the current series is very minimal.
Where'd you hear that? The internet?
Newsdrama.com. Sorry.
So that's a yes.
What was it?
And
what was the name of the internet site?
Newsarama.
Newsarama. Oh, I know that site. Yeah, Newsarama.
Yeah. I guess, you're basically like an executive producer type of thing, right?
More than that.
A little more than that?
Yeah.
Okay, but I also heard, I think that...
You hear a lot.
After Dark Knight 3, there's going to be another series where you're going to be much more involved.
Where did you hear that?
Is that correct?
Okay, we are taking you away from the internet as we speak.
A Dark Knight 4 series, which is more in line.
No, we're jumping right to Dark Knight 12.
Right in the post-it.
It's just the rumor I heard.
You heard that right
You're going to
here.
do another series where it's more what you...
Okay, Dark Knight 40. Do we hear 50?
All right, dude.
No truth to it at all.
No truth to nothing you've read on the internet. Put it that way. I think.
Take that as a pretty much an axiom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, dude. All right, turn your computer off. Hey, man. Hey, what's up?
How you doing? The question I have for Mr. Miller is, my favorite cover of yours is Daredevil 182, where Daredevil is clutching Elektra's grave in a snow-filled graveyard. The question I have is, what informed the making of that cover? Like, was there an emotion or an event? Obviously, he's very sad that he's lost her, but I've always found that cover to be very moving, and I was wondering if you still recall any of the creative process that went into that. And I wanted to say quickly, thank you for saving Daredevil when you did.
Thank you. As far as a personal incident?
Well, no, just was there something that inspired you, you know, an event, or maybe, you know, you thought of someone, how would you feel if you lost someone, something like that?
Well, that's just it. There was, and it was personal. Thanks for asking.
And you understand when personal things hit you, it comes out in different ways, formats, whatever, music, art. But you don't want to delve too deep into personally what brought them to that, unless they want to tell you. All right, you good? Okay, we're gonna go 2 more questions. Okay, we'll go to this side and then one again, and then we're gonna let Mr. Miller go. Hi.
Hi, how are you? I was just curious, for Frank and Brian, are there any characters specifically that you guys would like to redefine across any of the mainstream industries to present your take on the character, such as you've already done in the past, but is there anyone specific that you'd like to do now?
Oh, no.
I get Brother Power the Geek.
Okay, I'll take Jimmy Olsen.
No, I want Jimmy Olsen.
That's an interesting question, you're right. And notice Jimmy Olsen's not a superhero, but they're talking about re-imaging.
Oh, absolutely Jimmy Olsen, kid. Look what Jack Kirby did to Jimmy Olsen. He gave us the new gods.
Right, yeah, they came out of Jimmy Olsen. So, I think there's a lot of fertile ground in young Olsen. That, I mean, he's Superman's pal. It's in the title. But he's Superman's pal. At the same time, all he wants to do is expose Superman's secret identity to everybody.
It's a special relationship,
Yeah, what
Brian.
kind of pal is that?
I don't think I want to be called Superman's pal. I'd get teased up and
How about Superman's boy?
It's even worse. Absolutely. But you're right. I mean, I think the re-imaging of Jimmy Olsen would be perfect. You know, you just can't build up on superheroes all the time. They have support, but what?
Look what happened when Jack Kirby reemerged, took on a title nobody remembered, and turned it into the most exciting comic book being published at the time. When Jimmy Olsen could be the best comic book out there. It was for a while.
It's great. That's writing, guys, not just, you know, quote unquote comic.
Brother Power the Geek. That's
Too good to be true.
Yeah. that takes
All right. Okay, and the absolute last question for this panel goes to this young lady right here. Hello.
Hi, I was just wondering, in Batman Year One, why did you depict Lieutenant Gordon the way you did?
As a really good, honest man in a rotten town, doing his best to save it, who teamed up with the vigilante who was bringing justice, seemed like a good idea at the time.
I think I was more referring to, everybody else seems to make him look perfect, but you kind of made him cheat on his pregnant wife.
Yeah. Batman was the iconic hero. Jim Gordon was the human face the book had. Jim Gordon was the rest of us. Batman was the ideal.
That's what I was thinking. In a world where none of these characters could basically ever exist, we needed some sort of serious connection between us and that unreal world, and he did it in terms of Gordon. So that was, he cheated on his pregnant wife. Newsflash. Of course, that never happens in reality. Right, exactly.
He also completely made good on the entire situation, and confessed, paid penance, etc.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had the pleasure of having this incredible gentleman, both of them, let's say, both of them being